So I lived in Russia for a couple of years, and there were some hard-won lessons about hiking and taking photos in the snow, and I seem to have forgotten every single one of them. Lesson number one: in a blizzard, wear contact lenses. It's a beautiful morning here in the Brecon Beacons. I didn't have to head off too startlingly early today because it's a snow day, and there wasn't really a sunrise to speak of, so I wasn't looking for really nice colours or anything like that. But there's this composition I've had my eye on. I took it back in autumn the first time, and there wasn't any light then, and it was a little bit too busy. I think snow will simplify it nicely. The snow's actually not as thick here as it was when I left Bristol, but it's starting to pick up now, so hopefully within the next couple of hours or by the afternoon, might have a chance on that composition, and if not, I'll do some exploring and I'm sure I'll find something else.
I went out late one night, moon and the stars were shining bright. Snow come up and the trees came down. Tell you boys I was worried about.
Just arrived at the first major waterfall of the trail. So it's quite nice. I was worried when I first arrived that the snow wasn't thick enough, and down here in the valley it's definitely a bit scraggly. But I think up on the waterfall that I'm going to try and take a photo of, it might look quite good. So I'm quite optimistic actually. Well, I was on a mission up to my pre-planned composition, but looks like there's something to be made here, even though the snow is not that thick yet. So I'll just talk you through the composition that I'm working on. So quite simple really, nice lead-in line. What I love about this one is that the waterfall is mirrored by some hanging ivy or some sort of leaves. I can't really see what it is through the snow, but it creates a beautiful kind of echo of the waterfall on the right hand side of the composition. What I think I'm probably going to do is move over more centrally, because I think the white water of the rapids at the bottom is not balancing well with the top half of the composition. So I've got a little dry patch in the middle of the river here, and I think moving that white water over to the left hand side might balance the composition a little bit better, so I'm gonna try that before I move on. I always forget just how much of a gear management situation it is when you're taking photos in the snow. Such a pain in the arse, but I think I prefer this composition, and if anything, I'm going to work that bit of white water further to the left, so I'm going to step right slightly and give a bit of balance to how demanding the waterfall subject is on the right hand side of the composition. But yeah, pretty pleased with the way this one looks now. I might try a couple more compositions, but I think I'm ready to move on. So we're back at the editing station in the warmth, and I thought I'd talk you through what worked and what didn't work about these two compositions. So as I suspected while we were on the location, I don't think this first version of the composition worked very well. It's a little bit too symmetrical for my liking. You've got this wedge shape of the white water and the stream through the foreground, and then you've got obviously the subject waterfall there. And then I talked about this ivy on location, and that takes up a bit of attention too. And I can't help feeling that the foreground water and the ivy kind of mirror each other in this weird kind of butterfly wing shape. And I don't like the pure symmetry of that. So I don't think this version of the composition works. It's not totally unpleasant, but it just feels like too much of the attention is drawn to the right hand side of the composition, and it feels somewhat imbalanced. I moved over to the right as we went through in the video, and I feel like this is a better version of it.
this white water grabs your attention, and these two elements grab your attention, and they somewhat balance each other, and I think that works very well. There are also other pleasing shapes within this composition that I feel work to its advantage. You've got this wedge shape here which pushes the eye back into the composition. You've got the nice V here pushing the eye again back into the composition, and then below this ivy here you've got a line leading in, and that's mirrored just below here. You've got other triangular shapes which do the same sort of thing. Another thing I really like about this is the repeated, not quite horizontal lines throughout the image. So you've got this rock in the foreground here underneath the water, and then you've got another one here, you've got another one here, another one here, and then ripples throughout it, and all of these, like herringbones, lead you into the scene. All in all, I'm fairly pleased with this image. It's not portfolio level, but I'm happy enough with it, and before too long I'd like to see it in print.
Just following the sheep prints. Stopped in his tracks. Sorry mate, didn't mean to interrupt your wander. This is your hill. There we go. Actually, better than I was expecting. Might wait for an hour or so to see if the snow thickens, but that could work. So there are a couple of things that immediately stand out about this shoot as potential challenges. So the ground's really rough, tufty, brackeny, heathland, and the snow has to be pretty thick to cover that smoothly. So it doesn't look picture perfect, but then again, by the same token, it does contrast quite nicely with what's a particularly boring sky. So maybe I can make that work. So I'll try and overcome that challenge, or wait around until the snow's a bit thicker. It's coming down fairly heavily, so might only get cleaner, the composition. And then the second challenge, which is what I've been dealing with all day, is the snow and the direction I'm going to be shooting. I don't know whether you can see this on camera, but I'm shooting directly into the wind, down the tunnel of this valley, and it's going to be a real nightmare to keep my lens clean while I shoot this image. And challenge number 3, this snow here is absolutely pristine, and I'm going to have to start on this edge, see if I can spy a composition before stepping onto this and ruining it, because I have a feeling that this will be jutting out, this rock here will be jutting out into whatever composition I have, although I'm quite keen to investigate whether there's a composition from standing on that rock. So I'm going to have to be quite careful about how I approach this, because I don't want to ruin nice virgin snow. So it's as I feared, this tree on the left I want out of the composition, but actually the flow of this rock and the rock in front are quite nice, so I'm loath to step onto this and ruin any future chance of using it, unless I stay down here. Yes, I think for the first shot I am going to stay down here and try and compose with those two rocks in, and maybe keep the tree on the left to a minimum, maybe only have their branches leading in to centre on the composition. I have to make sure that the branches aren't encroaching on this subject tree on the hill, but I think I can make that work, especially with a vertical composition. Just want to give you an example of why it's so important in snow and sand to really scout carefully with your camera first, with your mobile phone camera first. See, the composition that I was looking at, this is the foreground, but I didn't like the way there's all of this black water here, so I've been playing with how to rearrange, and having the foreground all the way like this, there's some lovely ripples in the snow that lead into the scene. Blocking out the bottom of this island that's covered in snow in the middle actually makes the composition more pleasing and naturally leads your eye into the image more. Does anyone else get frozen sometimes by whether to stick or twist on a composition? I've been playing with this shot that I introduced earlier for the best part of an hour and a half, and I really don't want to step any further onto those stones with the lovely rippled snow, because I have a feeling that will be that I currently have the best composition. I'm going to give it another half an hour or so, and then I'm going to head home. Despite my best efforts, I managed to get quite damp and quite cold, so I've moved further into the scene. I'll flip the camera around and show you. It's always about compromises with these compositions. So first of all, it's a bit of an awkward working environment. I'm having to crouch like Gollum around my contorted tripod, and I don't like these branches on the left hand side, so I'm having to compose to the right of those, and I've only got a 24mm lens that can be polarized, so I'm having to go quite low in order to get enough of the waterfall in and get the composition. So it's a bit of an awkward one, but I think I've got it working. It's a sign I'm having fun. Meant to leave about 2 hours ago, still in a similar spot. So I'm composing with these clumps of snow on boulders. If you get really low to them, they create really nice shapes. Still composing with this tree on the brow of the hill. Right, that's it. Both batteries are exhausted. It's one of the most difficult things about shooting in the snow is battery management. So I'm all done for the day. Gonna head back, get a warm drink, and I'll see you at the editing station to explore the compositions that we got.
Time to look at these compositions and see whether I should have stuck or twisted. Up first is the composition I sat on for most of the morning and a little bit of the afternoon, and I'm relatively pleased with it. Compositionally, it has some interesting things about it. I like this contrasty wedge running through the middle of the image, and I like the repetition of these shapes. The whole scene could have done with a little bit more flowing water, but overall I'm pleased with it. What I am second guessing is my decision to use these foreground rocks in the way that I did. There's not enough tonal differentiation between the island and the snow-covered rocks on the foreground. I got very fixated on these reeds while I was out shooting, and actually in a lot of ways it would have been better if they weren't there, because then I would have moved forward into the scene and maybe allowed more of a dark line of water between these foreground rocks and this island. What I do really like is the depth that the blizzard gave. The contrast of the tree is a lot lower, and you can already see it by the time you get to these bushes and trees here that the snow is falling between and creating kind of misting effect. This one turned out really nicely. I like how clear the composition is. You've got a nice triangular wedge here. Other shapes running throughout it and leading into the image. I like the textural contrast between the smoothness of the water and the choppiness of the snow in the background over here. It would have been nice if there was a little more snowfall and this area here became smoother and less attention grabbing, but overall I don't mind it. I do worry that this bush encroaches a little bit too much on the subject tree, but maybe I'm nitpicking. I've yet to do any editing on this image, but it's the one that I think is very near to being the best. However, it does require a little bit more snow to push it up into a portfolio level image. I like these shapes leading you on into the scene. What I don't like is this harsh, high contrast, patchy bit of snow. It really takes the attention away from the interesting subjects and foreground. Overall though, I like this image. The elements are quite bold and they're tonally separated from each other. A brooding sky and a bit more snow, and this image would have been portfolio level. If you enjoyed the content of this video, let me know in the comments section. More of this to come in the future.